Good evening. I'd like to call the Marlborough School Committee meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Mrs. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Tonight, I want to highlight a few items from Marlborough High School. So Dr. Riley is joining us. The first item is that on October 11th, Dr. Riley presented to the committee a graduation update on the class of 2023. He's returning to update the committee on the mid-year status of the graduating class. Dr. Riley?
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me tonight. So just to look at where we're at with our senior class, I wanted to recap on the first slide here what the requirements are for this particular class as the state phases away from the competency determination years during COVID and moves back towards what they kind of have as their normal standards. First and foremost, successful completion of both the math and the ELA MCAS exams are required of this class. And it's all based on scores, so they have to pass those exams. And depending on how much they pass those exams by, they could either be all set in the clear, they've had proficient or advanced as their outcome, or if they're in that sort of what we historically know as needs improvement category, or partially meeting expectations as it's now called, then they need what's called an educational proficiency plan, which is really just structured through 4 years of math or 4 years of ELA to make that requirement fulfilled. The science MCAS is still being fulfilled through direct coursework, so this is the last class that has a waiver on the science MCAS requirement for the state. In addition to this, in our last meeting in October, we talked about looking at the possibility, if needed, to reduce the 96 local credit requirement. And we want to be a little bit conservative about that because we want to make sure that our seniors are working to meet those requirements. So that'll be a last-minute game time graduation decision. So we're not telling the students that they do not have to meet 96 credits. In fact, we're telling them they do have to meet 96 credits, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. In addition to that, also looking at our district's mass core requirement within those 96 credits, that'll be something else that we take a look at come graduation time and make some adjustments. I'll have some recommendations around some adjustments if it's needed. Looking at next steps and what's going on right now with this particular cohort of students. So we had MCAS retest that occurred in November. We had a very successful outcome with students enrolled that participated in those exams. 44 out of 47 of the seniors that needed to participate in that retest did. And I know you might be thinking, what about those 3 students that didn't show up? As you know, we have a high percentage of transient students in Marlborough Public Schools. Unfortunately, sometimes we have students that enroll and they stay with us for a very short amount of time. And then we might chase them and try to find out if they've enrolled in another school district, if they've started to work full-time. So we are chasing those 3 students to figure out what their plan is. But 44 out of 47 is a really good outcome for us compared to what we've seen in previous years. Their results will be coming out actually at the end of the week or early next week. And based on those results, we're looking at offering, as I spoke about in October, an MCAS Acceleration Academy over the February break. We did this last year. And one thing I want to point out about the outcomes from last year's Acceleration Academy, we actually did them in February and in April, is that 2/3 of the students that participated in those Acceleration Academies during the breaks met with success on the MCAS. So excellent outcome. So we're looking to run that again. We'll figure out how many of the 44 students that sat for the MCAS might need that opportunity to pass MCAS, and then we'll be personally inviting those students to participate in that first Acceleration Academy in February. Our guidance department is also currently monitoring 68 educational proficiency plans. So just to go back to what I said a few minutes ago, those are students that have passed the MCAS exams, but they might be in the partially meeting the expectations category. So their plan is to fulfill our curriculum with either 4 years of math or 4 years of English in whichever area they need an EPP for. And so the guidance department is working with those seniors to make sure that they're passing their classes. And that sums up my presentation for the committee tonight. Are there any questions?
For this one, yeah, questions. Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. So thank you for the clarity around some of those things. I do have a few additional questions. Specifically, let's start with the policy and the credit requirement where we currently have the 96 credits. I recognize that from an administrative standpoint, you're going to need to, move things around. Is there a way that you can come back to us to give us a heads up as to directionally where you think you're headed as things are getting closer and closer so that we understand? Because I think, we've had a lot of discussions around the number of credits over the years, and I think we want to try and stick as close as we can to it. I recognize that this group was impacted
With a shorter schedule.
with a
so
right.
fewer
So
options.
I completely get that, but I think we also want to be really cautious about how much we move off that mark, right?
I agree. And yes, we can absolutely do an update. I think Superintendent Murphy and I looked at their sort of 4-year trajectory and what they were able to achieve each year and kind of came up with a figure on our own of what we felt might be a fair ground for interpretation or for discussion. But we can absolutely come back and look at it. We respect the fact that these are our standards. We also understand that this particular group was impacted by that pandemic. So we're trying to find that middle ground, but we can absolutely involve the committee in that conversation to make sure that we're all on the same page as we go into graduation.
I think it just would be helpful, just like we've had many discussions around the study hall versus not having study hall kind of discussion. It's trying to keep the rigor there and the expectations there, and recognizing that the whole group of students all had the same thing. So if some are still achieving on that higher end, we want to keep on pushing people to continue on that trajectory as much as possible.
Absolutely. And this is still going to be an ongoing conversation that we will most likely be having potentially even with the class of 2024. So I think it's healthy to get into the weeds on this and really discuss expectations.
Well, and you went exactly where I'm going, is that my concern is not that I think we are, I don't want it to appear as if there's a precedence, right?
Sure.
I think we want, and I think all of us agree, we all want to keep on pushing it to where the expectation
But we
is.
do also want to be aware that a remote schedule for all of our students was different than an in-person schedule for a number of different reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then I think just if you can come back as well relative to that MCAS testing with the 44 out of the 47, just so we have an understanding of,
Sure.
what's going on there. And thank you for already giving us the insight about the 3. Yes, we know we've got a lot of different transient student situations, but that would be helpful to just have you keep on coming back so that we can get a rundown.
Yeah, happy to. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? I do have one question. With the, if you do wind up holding the Acceleration Academy, and let's say you have 3 kids, is there any thought to opening it up to juniors who are in the same situation, just so maybe they could pass it earlier than waiting
Yeah.
until senior year?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, depending on the capacity.
Yeah.
We absolutely could, hopefully, unless there's only 3 that need it, then that would be a great thing.
That would
but-
be a great thing. I'm just saying,
Absolutely.
like, obviously capacity, the seniors are the first priority. But if
Absolutely,
you're
yeah.
holding it and you have spaces, opening it up to juniors, that might be in a similar situation.
Oh, absolutely, yep.
Great.
Sorry, you just reminded me of one. Do all of these folks know that that's a potential to have this acceleration opportunity just as an in case? Because I know sometimes, people are planning to go do something during February break.
Yeah.
and-
So we're sort of at the mercy of the state's reporting on results.
Right.
So the students do know that we have offered it in the past year. We have the students ready to be communicated with as soon as the state results get released, hopefully as soon as Friday. So
Okay.
that we can tell them, we really strongly recommend that whatever you have planned be put on hold for this so that you can get on track to graduate.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that at minimum to at least say to the 44, just a heads up, this is available.
This could be coming
in
your way.
case, secure your time.
The guidance counselors have been having a lot of conversations with these particular students this year because it's the mindset, I think, coming into the year was they looked at the previous classes and they saw many of the state allowances that came with the graduation criteria. And so we've been trying to be very clear with them on that those allowances have now changed and they need to meet the new requirements that are back in place. At least most of them are back in place.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I also asked Dr. Riley today to update us on the Marlborough High School early college and advanced placement options. In November, Mrs. Bodenhedger and I attended a session on the Massachusetts Early College Initiative and its impact in addressing equity gaps at the MASC-MASS Joint Conference. So I asked Dr. Riley to update the committee on the high school's early college and advanced placement. So Dr. Riley?
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Murphy. I think this is just wonderful to do often, right, is to remind each other of what we do for students and really what makes our district special. Mr. Diaz, thank you very much. So number one, we are most fortunate as a high school to offer up to 21 free college credits to our students. And for those of us who can do the quick math, that's about 70% of a full year of college. That's built right into our high school model. If you look at the list, most of them are foundational type courses that exist across math, ELA, the humanities. We also have a new course, if you remember from our program, studies conversations back in the spring, that's called the First Year Experience. And a lot of colleges are starting to implement that for their freshmen, really to help lower the attrition that occurs at colleges. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too into the presentation. I did a national average on the savings that this program offers to our students, and the national average is about $10,000 in tuition costs. And for those of us who have either paid for college or sort of are paying for our children to currently go through college or just finished, tuition is only one part of the expense, and being on a campus costs additional money. So that number, the 9,576 in average savings, is actually, I think, smaller than what it really is. And I had a parent who contacted me last year whose daughters, twin daughters, are attending a private school, private four-year school. And she says to me, so I just wanted to call you and tell you about your early college program and the experience I had with my daughter's college. And she said, they just sent me a bill for $1,400 to transfer all those credits into the school. And I said, I'm sorry. And she said, no, don't be sorry. She said, you saved me $30,000 per child because they don't have to take their last semester on campus and they're done early. So that was wonderful to hear. I think stories like that are really beneficial to know about in terms of the benefit that our students are getting out of our early college program. So this is just kind of the scope and sequence of the program, and I wanted to share that with you and update you on that. Go ahead, Mr. Diaz. Similarly, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the scope and sequence of our advanced placement program at Marlborough High School. So we currently offer 23 different advanced placement courses in person. Okay, so I did a poll with some of my colleagues in the mid-watch and asked them to share data on how many in-person advanced placement courses they're offering. The next largest number we got from a high school, local high school that has over 2,000 students, was 18. And the rest, the average fell around 12, 13 APs on the higher end. So that's about 12, 13 on average across schools in our area. So how proud should we be? We offer 23 in-person classes, and that's just wonderful for our students. When we dig into the data a little bit more on the next slide, I wanted to give you a little bit of sort of a historical trajectory on where we've been and where we're going. So right now, our early college program is at the largest it's ever been. And for some of us who remember back in 2011, we were talking about early college and the 18 students that were enrolled in that first cohort. So 382 early college seats this year at Marlborough High School. So we're projected to provide students with 1,146 free college credits. That's 180 different students that are taking early college courses at Marlborough High School. 36% of the junior-senior class is in our early college program. It's a 19% increase from last school year to this school year. And we're going to talk a little bit about the impact that this has on the future trajectory in a minute. And that's also super important because this is a big investment for us in the right kind of education, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Similarly, looking at our advanced placement program, our advanced placement program has been established and been recognized for decades at Marlborough High School. And what has been really important to me as the principal, especially going through the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, has been maintaining and then regaining the strength of that program. And I remember speaking to one of our colleagues from the MIMSI grant, if those of you who remember when we were involved in the MIMSI grant, and I was coming into the early college discussion. And the perception was early college and AP can't exist in the same, they don't play nice in the same sandbox. And we've totally dispelled that. I think that's great for high schools to see that they don't have to choose one over the other, but providing both for students is a real benefit. 362 AP seats this school year. It's 155 different students that are participating in our AP program. One of the things that we started to recognize 4 years ago were the outcomes of our AP scholars at Marlborough High School. Those are the students that take multiple AP courses and achieve a qualifying score, an average qualifying score or higher. So we're at 37 AP scholars from 2022, and that's an increase of 42% from 2021. 31% of our junior-senior classes participate in advanced placement at Marlborough High School. And that's just a slight 2% increase from last school year. But overall, when you look at Marlborough High School and you say all the stuff that we do beginning freshman year, the teaming, the honors program, the pathways for early college and advanced placement, all the supports that we provide. Right now, 49% of our juniors and seniors participate in advanced coursework at Marlborough High School. 1 out of every 2 students, and that is a real triumph for us. It's a real triumph for any school to be able to say that. So congratulations on those outcomes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the demographic breakdown of our students. Mary had asked me if I could specifically look at this with respect to early college, and there's a couple of things that I want you to know. And I provided you with a handout, and yours is a little bit better than mine, so forgive me because I'm going to have to look close at mine. I have the double slides going.
I have an extra set of cheaters if you want.
Thank you. Thank you for the offer. So when we look at the breakdown of our early college program, about 50% of the students enrolled in early college are Latino Hispanic students. In addition to that, when you look at our economically disadvantaged population, that's almost 40% of our early college program. Something that I'm very proud of, and it doesn't stand out in the data that I provided to you, but 3 years ago, when I analyzed the student breakdown, the population breakdown of our early college program, what stood out to me were two subgroups: students with disabilities and EL students. And the reason why it stood out to me was because they were both 0% in early college. Now, we went to work on that, and we tried to create pathways with the realignment of our CP Communications and Composition course. We have our One Goal FYE cohort that started this school year. And so both of those populations are now between 5 and 6% in terms of the enrollment in early college. Another fantastic gain for us. Okay, so now we're going to go to the FAFSA data. So last school year, 76% of our for the class of 2022, 76% of those students completed the FAFSA. Why is that important? Because across the whole state, on average, 58% of students complete FAFSA across the state of Massachusetts. Similarly to that, below you'll see the students that enrolled in college immediately after high school. These two things, by the way, as a researcher that looks specifically at early college, as you know, my dissertation is in early college. FAFSA and immediate enrollment in college are two of what we call gateways, right? That students need to get through those gateways if they want to achieve in college and then hopefully persist in college. So 70% of our early college students enrolled in college immediately after high school. That's compared to 61% of the state on average. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, when we look at the graduating class of 2020 and their early college experience, which at the time was limited to 12 credits, not 21 as we have now, and look at their outcomes in terms of their college persistence, and we see that 86% of those students stayed in college into their third year, which again is another one of those large gateways to successful degree completion. 86% compared to, on average across the state, 52% of students make it into their third year of college. So I just wanted to share the breakdown of that data as well with you because I think it tells the story behind the program that we've spent a lot of time trying to work to make better for students. This is a wonderful investment for the students in Marlborough Public Schools, and I just wanted to share that data with you as well. Thank you.
Who's going to call the reporters? Because that's something to squawk about. I mean, it's huge, 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 huge. And kudos to everyone because it's not, I mean, thank you for taking the lead, within the high school. But, I mean, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, if you will. And, I mean, that's really incredible news that really does need to be shared. And I wonder about with the early college course offerings, I know that you all have really been trying to have a lot of meetings early on when kids are coming into the high school, but it almost seems like you got to hit that family core when they're coming in right away so that they can really kind of from a trajectory understand what they can accomplish. I mean, I kind of look over at you, Jess, and I think about the conversation that I have at home with, my current senior about, looking back, opportunities for her peers. And I would say to you is like how to make it more evident about how important it is to start ninth grade off on the right foot and get an idea, even if you don't know what you want to do, that each year is so important. I think sometimes with seeing what we have as offerings and how that can financially really make an incredible impact, it's almost like hit them early so that everybody knows, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've been thinking about it a lot because I'm a senior. But I think I really considered maybe a little longer of like what classes I wanted to take, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, which is completely fine. But I didn't even really know what QCC classes were until like my junior year or like sophomore year when I was picking my junior year classes. And for a while I was like, oh, it won't even matter because I probably won't go to like a state school, and I committed to one, which is great. But now I'm like very much regretting not taking as many. So it's like, I think also really emphasizing that, because there is a lot more likelihood that you end up getting credit through that rather than taking APs, because a lot of people do, and that's amazing. But as long as you pass your QCC class, like you get that guaranteed credit within state schools. But like with APs, a lot of the time you don't end up getting the credit. And I think having that emphasis is also really important because it can be really impactful, like you said.
Absolutely, Jess. Thank you.
Yeah, but in the example that Dr. Riley gave us, even if you go to the private school, they will accept, for a fee, a nominal fee, they will transfer those credits over. So even going to a private school doesn't preclude you from getting those credits.
And I guess that's what I just think that that's something that to hit the families with early on, so that they know and understand and can really work together to make those decisions. Because even if you don't know what you want to do, which a lot of kids are not going to in ninth grade know what they want to do, some of these are your standard courses that can support the general ed requirements, and you're getting it for free or very, very little, But I just think that sometimes you don't think about that in ninth grade, but you need to be thinking about that a bit. Not to scare people, but actually to help them for planning and having those open kind of lines of communication. So,
Absolutely.
And this is great. And if nobody else is, I'll be ready to contact the newspapers, because this is huge. It's huge information. And thank you for all of the breakouts.
Sure.
It's great news.
So, I'm guessing, along her line of thinking, that guidance has done a lot of work communicating this with people, because the numbers have dramatically increased in terms of the number of kids that are taking advantage of it. But is it mostly done on an individual basis, guidance counselors talking with their students, or is it part of the welcome to ninth grade parent meetings? At what point along the line are you communicating that this is going to be a possibility to folks?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Even in eighth grade, we try to share this information. I think this is a bit more detailed than we've gone in the past, and our program has changed. So in prior years, the eighth grade conversation might have been, you can get up to 12 free college credits. Well, now we talk to the eighth graders about up to 21 free college credits. The comparison information, too, that we now have from kind of digging deep into the data is super important for parents to know.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we share that along the way. I think some of our biggest recruitment base comes from where Jess had identified when she first heard about the program, which is you're a sophomore, you're about to go into the upper class range, you want to start thinking about AP, early college, and our teachers across the board, especially in 10th grade, do a wonderful job talking to their classes about those opportunities, especially come course selection time. What's also super helpful, though, is teachers in the 11th grade who now have a direct link to early college through the CP Com and Comp class, because you don't want students to just hear about it in 10th grade, and then if they don't go into the program, they never hear about it again. And so when I talk to state leaders or other school officials about early college, I talk about multiple entry points throughout high school trajectory. So our junior CP class is a class that comes right before college credit-bearing classes now because of the overlay of the curriculum that work that we did with QCC. So taking that class and passing that class, now all of a sudden your course selection conversation as a senior is, you've passed this class. Are you ready to take early college classes as a senior? Multiple entry points for our students, and I think that that's also helped increase the number of students participating significantly.
That's awesome. I have one question. Is there, I'm assuming there has to be, some overlap? Are there some kids that are taking both early college classes and AP classes?
Oh, absolutely.
I would assume.
What I tried to do for the presentation, though, was give you a breakdown of completely separate numbers for at least one statistic. So within the 36% that are early college students and the 31% that are AP students, there's obviously overlap there. They're not all individual students. But the true number that you get is 49% of the class individually is participating in those classes. So there is an overlap in the percentage. There are a lot of students that are doing both to their benefit. As Jess talked about, we do have an agreed upon articulation agreement from my days as director of STEM. We have an articulation agreement that still exists between Marlborough High School and the community and state colleges in Massachusetts, which is if you take this AP class and you get this qualifying score, you will get credit for that class. Mm-hmm. So that's also beneficial. And when you think about the merger of the two, if a student were to take our entire early college curriculum and then they took AP Calculus, AP Biology, AP Chemistry, and got qualifying scores and then went to a state school, they've just knocked off a whole year of college.
You go in as a sophomore.
Absolutely. So we're very proud of the work that we've been doing and will continue to do and monitor, and really making sure that the program continues to be accessible to all of our student populations, and that's what we're really starting to see.
Awesome.
You need to use this as a marketing tool in 8th grade, if you haven't already, because this knocks it out of the park as far as any of the comparisons to some of the other choices that people have. They need to know this information because this is a game changer.
Yeah.
It should be, and if it's not, then I'm gonna look at people and say, "Are you kidding? Look at what you've got here."
So we're already scheduled for the next Superintendent's Corner episode to share this as well in another platform. And we've been talking to Jill about taking snippets of some of those episodes and then sharing them in other ways, so that maybe 35 or 45 minutes is too long for some people, but some highlights.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
And maybe even like some student highlights, as Jess was just talking about, some of the kids that have seen this success, or, parents that have seen great news, about cost savings, because I think when you talk about the customers, being able to actually communicate, it's a one-on-one. It makes it a little bit more personal, and somebody else can see how it benefited them, and it's going to benefit me, right?
Absolutely.
So those little interviews, and it could be quick little TikToks that actually can be pushed out there and probably have great impact.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Jess.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on, I took a lot of APs last year. I'm taking some this year, and this is my first year taking a QCC course, and I think also it's really important to add, not all of them, but I think specifically psychology and sociology are semester courses, so even if you don't end up taking one senior year or junior year, there's still a chance for you to sign up for second semester if you find out about it, which I think is really great, and again, cannot emphasize enough that how much I regret not taking more. And I also just had a question.
Sure.
I know with freshman and sophomore year, there's less flexibility necessarily in which classes you can pick, because there's some you just have to take. But even going into sophomore year, is it a possibility for kids to start taking the QCC courses of maybe English or math?
It's something that we would have to discuss, but only because the standardized tests that happen during sophomore year is really a focal point for making sure that everyone's successful on those. The college curriculum, as you've probably, well, with sociology not so much, but if you took the English classes, you might see that there's not necessarily a direct alignment between those classes and the MCAS exam. So before we were to make a decision to say we're going to open that up, we just need to make sure that we're also meeting the students' needs to be ready for MCAS in the spring, because that's the graduation requirement. So, but it's a great question, and I'm always open to discussions about how we can think outside the box about our curriculum experiences. So thank you for bringing it up.
Awesome. Is AP US History still 2 years?
Yes,
So-
yeah, that starts sophomore year, but
Sophomore
there's
and
no
junior.
exam sophomore year, so then they transition to junior year, and then they take the exam at the end of
Right.
junior year.
Okay.
And I
'Cause
think now it's about 25% of this graduating class will have at least 12 college credits. So that's a pretty large number for us. So 1 out of every 4 seniors graduating will have at least 12 college credits. There's a larger number that have some college credits, but not 12.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else? Okay, I think,
All right.
are you dismissed? Well, let's talk about, yeah.
Also included in my report or attached to it was the final edited version of the Marlborough High School Decennial Report for their accreditation. So,
Oh, is your button on?
sorry.
There we go.
So if any member of the committee has any questions for Dr. Riley about the final edited report of the NEASC accreditation.
I have to admit, I have not fully digested the entire report, but I did have a question
Sure.
on what was in our packet, in the letter that they sent.
Yeah.
So, I probably, I don't know. My question is, so in the list of all of the amazing things that we have accomplished since the last visit,
The collaborative conference.
the
Yeah,
collaborative.
2.5 years ago. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
A couple of them, it talked about creation of core values, beliefs in learning, visions of the graduate, that we've done that.
Yes.
But farther down in the naughty list is the school as a written document describing its core values, beliefs about learning, and visions for the graduate. So what gives?
We
Can tell you what it is, we just didn't
'Cause-
write it down? Like, what's that all about?
There's multiple elements. So number one, I think NEASC always wants to give you something to work towards, which is a good thing. No school ever walks away from that process with
Perfectly,
a,
of
don't do
course.
anything different. Like, it's always some sort of feedback. And so if you break down each part of that sentence, so we have a vision of the graduate, which is visual throughout our entire school in every classroom. It's the written beliefs about learning that are stated and are posted and are being brought to life in all capacities of instruction that we do at Marlborough High School, where they're saying that's the next step. You have a vision, and you know what your beliefs are. Now we want you to bring them to life in all of your classrooms. So it's the beliefs about learning statement. When you dig into the document, you'll see that they talk about that as one area that we work on as part of our next steps.
Got it.
Can I add something about the
Please.
second bullet too?
Yeah.
Because
yes.
the supervisors have spent a tremendous amount of time. There is even a style template with what font and color and everything else to be consistent. And this has been going on since pre-COVID and continued even through COVID. But there have been discussions about some of the elements that NEASCs ask to be included in some of those templates, and they are not the exact language or format that we are comfortable with. So we've had those discussions about, is this something that we will do for compliance, or will we not do it because we think it's right? And it could be just a simple statement or the word objective instead of learning target, or things. That's like my perfect example. We use learning targets and success criteria. They might be looking for objectives. And so that's always going to be something that they're going to tell us to look at, not necessarily that is right for us.
I agree, absolutely. And sometimes, too, from a school standpoint, you just look at the communication that you have with the staff around how these things correlate sometimes with the language and the criteria of a different organization like NEASC.
Who's kind of a made-up organization anyways, right? I mean, they really don't have any power.
Well,
Right.
they give us an accreditation, which is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's value to it, certainly. And we're being evaluated relative to our peers in some ways. I mean, I think there's value to the exercise, but, if they have this rigid set of, square pegs, and we're a round peg in a certain area because that's what works for our community, I'm less concerned that we didn't tick all of their boxes. If generally speaking, I mean, this list of the things that we have accomplished is dramatically longer than the things that they're being kind of nitpicky about. I feel good about it.
Sure, and I think the most important thing for me immediately following the visit, was that they noticed that Marlborough High School has a very positive, healthy culture when it comes to the relationships that exist in the school. And that is from student to teacher, teacher to student, teacher to teacher, student to student. It doesn't mean that we don't have our shortcomings in certain areas that we have to work on. We absolutely do. But the overall vibe that these guests in our school got was that our school is a very positive, safe place to be every day. And for me as principal, I look at that as probably being the biggest necessity before any of the other stuff starts to happen, right? Everything else is icing on the cake after you've built an environment that fosters healthy relationships.
I agree.
And I was really, really happy to hear that from that team as the most important thing that they all recognized.
That's great. It's just amazing to me. I remember about 100 years ago when you were running that, Mr. St. George, you were in charge of the NEASC thing, and I was on the committee with you, and I mean, these things, it's just never ending, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to ask where it says the commission requests a first report of progress and planning by October 1, 23. So will we get a chance of being able to see some of that so we have an idea of where things are going?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been, I think, pretty good about sharing the various elements, like the collaborative conference report.
Yeah.
Now we have the 10-year visit report that you've received now, and then the follow-up report will be coming next. So absolutely.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I can make the assumption that you let them know that Mr. Bergeron is no longer the superintendent.
Yes, yeah, we have a data system that I just changed the names and all that and upload it. It's like a Google form website that they use, but yeah, it's all been updated. It does every year. You got to update it every year. So.
Yep. All right. Any other questions for Dr. Riley? Seeing none. Is he
Thank you.
dismissed now?
Well, if you will just stay for a
Yes.
second, because Mr. Rosenthal is going to be coming up, and we have something, it's not in my report, it's very exciting news.
Yes. When I saw our friend Jackson here, I thought,
Yes.
something's afoot. He's not on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Good evening. Nice to be
evening.
here. Thank you for Mr. Riley for joining me, and more importantly, can I ask Jackson Clemens to come on up? It is my pleasure to share with the committee that senior Jackson Clemens earned the top score in the 2023 All-State Music Auditions. As the #1 tuba player in the state and a member of the All-State Orchestra, Jackson will perform with 500 of the most talented student musicians from across the state. They represent excellence and achievement and are known as Symphony Hall Scholars. Jackson will take place center stage at Symphony Hall in Boston on Saturday, March 4th, 2023. Congratulations to Jackson and the entire music department.
Well, I wasn't expecting to talk, firstly, but I definitely wouldn't have been able to achieve this without the help that the music department has provided me, and it's definitely been a good experience that I've been able to audition for groups all throughout later years in middle school and throughout high school, and I wouldn't be in the position where I am today, being able to experience new cultures with music in settings outside of just the school. And I definitely have the school system to thank for that, so thank you.
Awesome.
When we're done, is it possible for a photo,
we do a
group
photo?
photo to be taken before Jackson? leaves too?
100%. Well,
Okay.
and we don't want him to have to wait through the whole meeting.
No.
I mean,
Yes.
we could do it
We can
now. We can
stop,
take
yes.
it. Yeah. So, Jackson, do you have plans for next year? Like, after graduation, do you know what's?
Next year, I'm planning on attending college with a major in architecture, and ideally, I'd like to be able to continue making music, even if it's just playing in the marching band or concert band, or if I'm able to get a minor in music performance, that's ideal. But I definitely plan on continuing music throughout college.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. So, do you want to just take a short?
I was going to say, I also wanted to, compliment you because you really, not only have you played the tuba and obviously exceptionally well, but you've also adapted to other instruments to kind of help fill in certain areas from a musical standpoint, which is not necessarily so easy either. Which is a great asset that you've offered. But I love hearing that hopefully you can do something with this in college, whether it's, getting involved in the band. Because I look at Emily Lucas? No, yeah, Allison Lucas. Allison. Yeah,
Oh,
Allison is down at,
Allison,
right,
yes.
at Alabama, and is, and we've had a number of the kids that are at BC in the middle, that are in the band, and I have to say, I absolutely love seeing our Marlborough students that maybe don't necessarily go down the path of continuing music as a major, but yet they find the way to continue music and in their hearts and keep it going, because that's one of the things that we've always talked about is we want to instill these incredible qualities of a whole child, right? And it becomes those incredible humans where it carries into your life far past just this little nugget. So you're a great example of that, Jackson, and hold that close, because that's going to be one of those things that will carry you on through your life in a real positive way just from this. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So we can take a quick photo? Is that okay?
Yeah. Why don't we take like a 5-minute recess?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's go.
Do you? Yeah, I would entertain a motion to move Ms. Haley up so that she doesn't have to. Oh, we're back from recess, right?
Yeah.
Someone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to move up the BPA 9A, thanks.
That's what I'm
Because I
going
wasn't
down.
looking at it.
Yep.
9A.
Motion made and second to suspend the rules to move item 9A up. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you. So I'm here for the approval of the annual State Leadership Conference for the Business Professionals of America. It is the Business Club, and we will be attending the conference in Norwood this year, not in Framingham. It's going to be an overnight stay. Last year, it was just a one-day in person. So the written tests I proctor all week long, and then we go away on Saturday and stay over. We have 3 meals and 2 snacks, and the price was $300 per student this year, which is a lot. So we have 20 members, but only 7 people felt that they could go to this particular conference, which is lighter than usual, but we have a lot of dedicated students that were going to be participating, as you could see from the list of things. Some different, some like the podcast team, that's unusual, and it's going to be very exciting. And our ethics and professionalism, and always our accounting. So that should be excellent. And of the 20 members, even if they're not participating in the conference, that's fine, they're still members. And we have been doing a lot of community service, as we always do. We have the reality fair in the fall. We did a holiday card making for the residents of New Horizons. And right now, we're doing a food pantry, and we'll be delivering that tomorrow. Maybe no snow. We'll see how it works out tomorrow. But yeah, we're going to go to the food pantry. So we've been working on those community service opportunities in addition to working on our events for the conference. And I would like to mention that with the help of Dr. Riley and Mr. Doug Diaz, we did get a grant for Reality Fair for $2,500. So that's dynamite. They helped me very much filling that out. And yeah, it came from the Commonwealth of Mass, so we can buy all our padfolios. The juniors used to be the seniors, but the juniors love that because they can go on interviews, use them later on in life. They're high quality.
Yeah.
And that is all I have, unless there's any questions. Yes.
Sorry, the only question I have is, do you feel like with the remaining out of that group of 20 that financially there might have been an impact?
100%.
And is there any way that others, we could find an opportunity to find money to help to support? That would other people be able to go? I'm just asking out of curiosity because I hate the idea that some of these kids would want to participate and financially, are impacted. So, sorry, putting you on the spot here.
That's okay.
No, we had this discussion, we spoke about that, and I think the answer is always yes, that we want to support any student that wants to participate.
Right.
There were a couple other logistics, though, Mrs. Haley, correct, that?
Yeah, there were some parents that weren't comfortable with a sleepover or 4 people per room they still had COVID concerns when I had the parent meeting in December. So they decided against it.
Okay.
So there were some of those concerns. I also think because of those couple years with COVID, the first year we had students that participated in this conference, but they did it virtually. Then last year, lucky enough that we got to go in person. So it's been a little different in that, we've had as many as 75 members. And usually we have around 20, 24, 27 people that go to the conference. But I think that it was hard, even though we do our fairs, our club fairs and everything, it's sort of something that you have to have a friend, like you want to have a friend that's part of the group. And we had almost all seniors last year that had participated. So we're rebuilding. And we'll try and see what we can do for the money. We did have a discussion, and I also talked to the BPA organization to see if they could offer us some relief. Because most of the schools are vocational schools, and they get Perkins grants, and so they go for nothing.
Yeah.
The grant pays for it.
Well, is it required that they stay over? It's not like Norwood's that far away, like.
It's required.
It's
yes.
required they stay over, so they couldn't come back and go back in the morning.
Correct.
I guess I'm
Unfortunate,
saying this,
'cause
and
it's not
I'm
that
looking
far.
at somebody who sits on a community service board, with me, that, boy, wouldn't I love to reach out to some of the different community service groups in town, whether it be the Marlborough Junior Women's Club, which, we're members of.
They do support us.
or-
We usually reach out when it comes to nationals. So it's
Right.
California. That's a minimum of $1,000 for each student. That's usually when we reach out. We don't usually reach out to the community for the state leadership conference. We need more help with the national. If someone really excels and does their share and gets accepted, but they don't have $1,000 to go to California, that's usually when we reach out to the community. I start my letter writing the minute that I know who won what, and I
Yeah.
send it out to 100.
I guess I'm just thinking about some of these kids that may not necessarily be able to have that chance of going to nationals, yet this is that opportunity to get that experience. That's where, I hear you about the national thing, and that's a lot of money, but I also look at, wouldn't it be great for some of these kids that, this might be an opportunity where we could see what we can do with partnering with someone to get some financial support. And I'm not trying to be the fly in the ointment.
No.
I feel for those kids that don't necessarily have some of the other areas of concerns.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best parts of our school district, supported across the board, and is whenever something comes up that involves our students, we always want to make sure that students aren't being excluded for reasons that are out of their control. And I think Mrs. Haley did a really nice job presenting the opportunity to all of the students and making sure that they knew that they wouldn't necessarily be excluded if they wanted to be part of it. And so the accommodations, one piece, there is some work that goes into this on their part, and they have to go there and they have to be prepared to compete. So I think for the students that decided that this was the experience they wanted, they're ready to do all of that and ready to compete for nationals. But whether it's the BPA program, whether it's our music program, we have a robotics competition coming up, a national robotics competition coming up, that there'll be a presentation to you on that opportunity. First question is, how can we make sure that the students who want to be a part of this are a part of this, and that they're not impacted by the financial requirement of the experience, right? The Bridges to Malawi program, we always took that approach. So it is always the first conversation we have as a school, is what do we need to do to support the students?
And thank you. I know you all do, and I'm sorry. I guess I just know, Ms. Haley, you've done such a great job with this over the years. So I guess I just look for any way we can help and support you and try and get, the community behind anyone that might be in the group that maybe felt that financially they couldn't do it. That if that's the case, then, let's hear back from you so that some of us can help to advocate on your behalf to try and find ways of finding financial support so these kids can have that experience. I guess that's.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, just.
Okay.
Approved?
So,
Make a motion, I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of sending these kids on to their first level for the State Leadership Conference, and if any additional can get there, love to help them.
motion made and seconded to approve the BPA trip to the Leadership Conference. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Okay, thank you.
All roads lead to Norwood.
Yes. Michelle, I do have one question. Because of the cost being so difficult this year, if we do go to California, do you still absolutely want 2 chaperones? Because I know that's, you feel more comfortable with that. Just another $1,000 or $1,200 to raise. I just was wondering what your perspective on it.
That's my hope, is 2 chaperones.
Yeah, but I
Just
thought you had
because if
mentioned that.
something happens out of state, we always have a second person that's there with the group, so it's
Okay.
not the school
No,
committee
I
policy.
thought she had mentioned that. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Always have a backup plan when you
Right.
send students out of state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Okay, so Mrs. Murphy, you still have number 4 on your report.
I do. And we don't have to decide this now. I just
We're
know
sharing
that.
thoughts, because I had it on my notes to bring this up myself.
Okay, yeah.
So,
And we had been brainstorming different, I think we had this conversation a couple of months ago, that the school district has several joint committees, and wondering if members of the committee would like to join some of those district-wide committees. And so we were brainstorming the current committees that we could, that are active, and be looking for membership. And so, as you know, we have the Joint Evaluation Committee, and then we have the Student Wellness Advisory Committee. That is a committee that we've been highlighting that wasn't meeting as much in person during COVID, but we want to, it's in, the first meeting is coming up.
well, it was supposed to be
Scheduled.
yesterday.
Yesterday?
Right. So
Yes.
I sat on that committee myself.
Yes.
So, but I had a conflict yesterday, so Mrs. Hennessy and Mr. Caruso were both gonna go.
Yep,
But, so it needs to be rescheduled because of the snow day.
yep. We also have a joint professional development committee. And we have the anti-bias, anti-racism committees, which we refer to as ABAR. And so just wondering, and it does not mean that we're limiting to only one member. If more than one member did want to join any of the committee, but wanted to put it up for your discussion or your consideration.
Right, and there were other committees, because I know you used to be on an MTSS committee, like, some of those other committees are not really active anymore.
So the MTRS committee, it was involved more into the strategies for improvement. So yes, so that data and intervention
Yep.
aspects of that, more so. But as we're going to reactivate that, I'll put out an invitation when that time comes for people to sit in on the strategies conversations as well.
So I guess what's the pleasure of the committee? Do you want to know more about these committees? Do you want to talk about them now? Do you want to think about it? And we can get back to the superintendent? What's your pleasure?
I mean, I guess my thought is, if we have interest, why not send to you as vice chair, as well as the superintendent, what our hopes are, and then see how it kind of lays out. You know, if we have enough representation and everything's covered or not. Does that make sense, folks?
Sure. And I think most of us know what most of these, well, the ABAR's new. Professional development, I don't know that a school committee member has sat on professional development before.
They have not. That is a joint committee of MEA members and district administrators. And it, one of the products of that committee has been a 3-year plan and how we define professional development. The first goal was to have educators excited about professional development in the Marlborough Public Schools. So we're very proud of that. And so that is, we're always looking for more input and feedback on that.
Excellent. Okay, so think on it, and, you know, the 2 that I've been on, I'm happy to share the wealth. Okay, so we'll be back in touch. Thank you. And I believe Mr. Diaz is next.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. This is tonight's update from Finance and Operations. Whitcomb Kitchen redesign. We are working with the Facilities Department to pursue capital improvements in the Whitcomb cafeteria. Similar to the work done at the Marlborough High cafeteria, we're seeking to install large entrances into the serving lines to make queues more efficient and to create a more welcoming environment for students. We're also looking to cool both the kitchen and the cafeteria areas, so adding air conditioning in those areas. With student participation recently ballooning to 75% of our students eating at the Whitcomb School, these capital improvements will help us maintain the additional meals volume in a more welcoming and efficient environment. Whitcomb bottle fillers. The Facilities Department recently completed the work of replacing all water bubblers at the Whitcomb School with water fillers. They would now prioritize replacing all the bubblers at the high school with water fillers. This work will start as soon as February vacation. My sincere thanks to Commissioner Divo and Facilities Foreman Dan Jackson for their tireless efforts on behalf of our schools. RPOC support. One of the FY24 budget priorities identified by the leadership team is providing additional clerical support to the Registration and Parent Outreach Center. This request relates to Strategy for Improvement Priority 3.1, strengthening relationships and services within our community. This will be part of the forthcoming FY24 budget. This will be a request on that budget that we're preparing right now. The request is for a 0.5 FTE clerical support position. There is an opportunity for us to get an early start on this request by repurposing existing FY23 kindergarten registration stipend funds to support this need as early as this spring. This would allow RPOC to improve our kindergarten registration process for parents 1 year earlier. Tonight, we are requesting your permission to post this position before we receive your final approval of the FY24 budget request. Happy to discuss any of these in more detail.
Well, you know me, I'm thrilled about the water bubblers because that's my thing, so yay! Glad that's moving along. And we're solidly at 75% at Whitcomb in terms of meals.
2 months in a row. Last month it was a little bit below. For December, it was like 73%. They're doing great over there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Any comments, questions for? Yep, Mr. Caruso.
Yeah, when do you anticipate you probably would need this position filled by for the registration?
So the kindergarten registration process usually starts February, March. So ideally, we'll be able to post that now, fill it quickly. It's a area of opportunity for us that we've identified that we can potentially do a little bit better. K-Reg, over the past few years, has been done by a existing employee who does it outside of her working hours. And the cost ultimately ends up being almost similar to having a 0.5, except that having a dedicated person during the day would provide better support for the families, but also better support for our own staff needing to talk about kindergarten registration during working hours. So that's the vision for that role.
So like now?
That's why we're bringing it up today, so that we could potentially get a head start on it. Obviously, if the school committee, after hearing the budget presentation during the workshop, if it's something that you don't support, would be in a bit of a bind, if you will. But we anticipate that we'll be able to defend this well. I think it's a need that the administration of the schools, our principals have identified. RPOC has identified this. We've reviewed it as a central office, and we support it as well. We think the need's real, and that's why we're approaching the school committee a little early.
So do you need a motion to do so?
Later,
Later? Okay.
yes.
I will hold off until later.
This
then.
is his presentation. It will be forthcoming, right? Oh, no, it's not as an action item.
It isn't. I didn't
Oh.
prepare this as an action item. We wanted your blessing. We don't generally have something like this as an action item. We could prepare for the next meeting if that's the committee's desire.
Well, I mean, if people are generally comfortable with it. I mean, I love that we can start it now and use repurposing funds that are just sitting there. That
Right. There's no
certainly
new
makes
funds
sense.
being created for this.
Yeah, and it's just, it's your job to figure out how we're going to pay for it next year.
Right. And we can afford it this year. Yeah.
So, Mrs. Hennessy.
Well, yes, but I'm guessing that you're going to be adding it on, it's going to be an added position or a half position that we're going to have within the budget, though.
So currently, that amount is in the budget, and we have to post one way or the other. So you're either posting for a 0.5 or for the stipend for that, which is the same amount of money for the rest of the year.
Which I understand. I guess my only concern is exactly what he was articulating, is that I feel a little uncomfortable that we're approving a position that's a new position, and we don't really know what we're going to be getting in the budget. And so at this point, it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Yes, we're going to approve from a stipend position, like you guys would already move forward with that. So I'm not sure that we really should be making a motion and approving at this point. If you all feel that you can move forward with it within your operational budget that's already been approved, then I would say more power to you. But then when we have our discussions then of the operational budget coming up, then I think we look at whether we approve that position or not. That's the only concern I have, because we just don't know yet what's going to be in front of us. But if you guys need to move forward with it, you have the money, then
Right.
go with God. Like that's your call. I don't know if somebody feels differently.
Does, do you feel that doing it as a stipend position for this year, and posting that or filling it however, versus posting it as a 0.5 FTE are going to result with different applicants?
Well, the stipend position would generally be for existing employees.
Okay.
So they'll be limited to working on this need outside of their existing working hours.
Okay.
And that has created some challenges for us, which is what the position that's dedicated for this need, it will address that issue.
So you'd rather have someone who doesn't also have another job
Correct.
doing it? Okay.
We just don't want to post for the position without talking to you about it first.
Right, so I mean, one option is doing what you're suggesting, making it a 0.5 position that will then continue on to the next year at peril, right?
Right.
At risk?
If the budget is approved as presented.
Correct.
Yep.
Or is it possible to just hire a temporary position?
We could post it as a 0.5 temporary position. It may limit our pool a little bit, but we could certainly post it as that. And then if we need to eliminate a position at the end of the fiscal year, then that person was forewarned that it was temporary.
It should be enough notice to,
Yes, we would have it,
You'll have the-
ideally in mid-March, we would know.
you'll know, yeah.
Right.
That's
And
just
now
only a
plenty-
few weeks, so.
And if you hired somebody now for it, and in mid-March, you say, well, we can't fund it, then they'll have enough notice.
Right,
Because this year will be through June or July or something.
correct. June 30, yep.
You want to say something?
Well,
Mrs.
I
Ryan?
was just going to add that it seems like, I know we don't have the full picture of the budget yet, but it seems like it's a small amount of money to invest in something like this, that I fully support it. And I know it's a risk for the person taking the position because they won't know if it's fully funded for next year, but I think there's many positions in school districts that are year to year that you never know if you're going to have that position next year, that it's always a risk. Exhibit A. Thank you.
Thank you.
So how do we want to handle this? Do we want to vote on it? I mean, it's, well, they need some direction.
I don't
So-
think you need to vote, Madam Mayor and Vice Chair. I think I'm clear on the committee, on our understanding of this. I think we did not feel like we could post this position without giving you a heads up
Yeah,
of
no,
what
we
we're doing
appreciate
and the thought process behind it.
Yeah.
As long as we're okay with perhaps posting it as a temporary position for now, 0.5, and then we'll present it to you fully as part of the FY24 budget to see if we can maintain it for future years.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel the same way as Ms. Ryan, so I would support it even if you hired them fully, but,
I'm just concerned at what you said about the temporary position may limit your pool of
Yeah.
your applicants. I don't know if.
What we could do is, during the interview process, we could explain to the person what we're discussing tonight.
yeah.
With the understanding that it's likely that we'll have funding for it, but we won't know until mid-March,
Okay, that's fair enough. So you can just post it as a regular position,
right?
not
And
temporary.
then have a conversation
move.
about,
Yeah.
And that would be great. I mean, honestly, that's the only thing I mean, to your point, yes, positions come and go as necessary, and that's normal, but I mean, I feel it's a little disingenuous when we haven't,
As long as we're upfront about it.
you know, we just have to be upfront about it, which of course you all would be, and it's just a recognition that we haven't gone through our budgeting process, so I just, you know, that's my only hesitation, so.
great. Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Diaz? Ms. O'Brien?
Hi, thank you. Tonight, I would like to provide the school committee with information on our social emotional learning and mental health. The district has had an unfilled and unbudgeted supervisor of counseling position since FY19. Given several actions outlined in the district's strategies for improvement and an increase in students' mental health needs since the pandemic, there's a need for a district-level administrator with expertise in this field to oversee social-emotional learning, or SEL, across the district. I've enclosed a presentation that I'm giving tonight, and this information is being provided as background that you'll receive as part of the FY24 budget proposal that you will receive at the next school committee meeting. So during the 2021-2022 school year, the strategies for improvement was updated and it was shared as part of the FY23 budget. There's several priorities that have elements of addressing SEL within this strategies for improvement document. So the first is priority 2.1, which is identifying and implementing common curriculum experiences across all grade levels by establishing a common understanding of the essential content that all students need to know, understand, and be able to do. In addition to aligning curriculum and learning materials and assessments with relevant state standards, district leaders will create a coherence by identifying common educational experiences across grade levels and or content areas. And this priority was focused not only on the academics and achievement aspects of learning, but also on the social-emotional learning with that curriculum that the state has outlined. So action steps within this priority that were specific to SEL was to identify and refine core SEL resources pre-K to 12, explore the possibility of a devoted SEL block built into schedules district-wide, identify and publish 2 common SEL curriculum experiences per grade on the MPS website and embed in staff curricular documents. So we have identified second step as one of the elementary, at the elementary level for curriculum. We don't know if that's sufficient. Are there gaps in that curriculum? Ways that we're implementing it, is it consistent across all 4 elementary schools? We also need to identify a curriculum and examine that curriculum at the secondary level for Whitcomb and the high school, and look at implementation within the general education classrooms and look to see what training and professional development that we need for our teachers in this area. So those are all things that we need to look at and have an administrator oversee as far as implementation goes for those action steps. We also have priority 2.2, which is supporting at-risk students through a comprehensive set of intervention systems, developing a common vision and definition of intervention by having a comprehensive intervention system, determine a set of common data to identify at-risk students and monitor progress, create more equitable access to interventions across the schools and grade levels. And again, 2.2 was also focusing on both academic achievement for students as well as SEL. So action steps that are specific to social emotional learning is that the district will inventory current intervention programs and screeners and research and select new ones that will be implemented consistently across schools. We're especially looking for a tool for social emotional learning, and that was projected at the time to be completed by June of 2022. That's been delayed. The elementary school adjustment counselors have gotten together to start developing an elementary screener using a questionnaire format that they are looking to implement this year. And we do not currently have a consistent screener for social emotional learning and looking at red flags and for at-risk students to be able to identify students that need either interventions or additional help in the area of mental health needs. So that's an area that we have that's in the budget. That'll be part of the budget presentation. But we need someone with that area of expertise to be able to find a screening tool that is able to provide the information that we need, but is also efficient for school, the school to be able to implement and administer and not be time consuming, and that it's information that will be able to readily be able to look at the data. So also as part of 2.2, we're also looking at being able to provide trainings in data coaching. So again, we need data to be able to look at through those screening tools. Also, trainings on restorative justice and other identified programs, which was also something that we were looking for to have by the summer of 2022, but it is a long-range program. The restorative justice is also something that is tied into priority 3.2, which is looking at it being able to have a coach to be able to do some of the additional trainings. So 2.2 also has, for action steps, is that the district will create a job description and list responsibilities for a district-wide PK-12 SEL coordinator and present a job description to the school committee for approval by January of 2023. The district would also establish a district-wide pre-K-12 SEL coordinator position, and that this proposed position would lead the efforts to identify an SEL screener, establish new SEL programs, and ensure consistency across the schools. Also within the strategies for improvement under 2.2 is that the district will train educators on new intervention screeners and programs so that educators can begin implementing them consistently across schools throughout the school year. The district would also provide additional trainings in restorative justice, priority 3.2, in each building, and other identified interventions throughout the school year. And then ongoing would be administering screenings and implementing interventions, monitoring that progress for effectiveness, and looking to see if any additional programs need to be, or interventions need to be implemented. So within that, so there's cross-section between multiple priorities in SEL, from the restorative justice to the curriculum to interventions. This also ties into our district goal 3 that Superintendent Murphy had presented to the district staff prior to the school starting. And District Goal 3 is on social emotional learning and restorative justice. That goal is that Marlborough Public Schools will continue to review, evaluate, and update current pre-K to 12 SEL frameworks. In conjunction with a multi-tiered system of support, MPS will engage in a second phase of trainings and implementation of restorative practices to ensure that the district is implementing a systematic approach to addressing students' social emotional needs at appropriate developmental stages. Next slide, please. So, based on the priorities and areas that that we're looking at to accomplish, the district identified needs are that the district needs to be able to have an in-district restorative justice trainer to provide sustainability to priority 3.2 in the district goal. The district needs a point person with SEL and mental health expertise to coordinate and implement relevant action steps in the district strategies for improvement. This would involve collaboration with building principals, supervisor of health and wellness, and the director of special education. The district needs to have clinical consultation and supervision for our school psychologists and school adjustment counselors on complex mental health student cases. That would involve collaboration with the building principals and the director of special education. The district also needs a district administrator with an area of expertise to participate in building level SEL committees to provide consultation and guidance to ensure that there's continuity across the schools. Next slide, please. The proposal is that we revise the existing Supervisor of Counseling Unit B position that has been unfilled and unbudgeted since the FY18. The position as it was written was limited in scope to supervision and evaluation of guidance counselors and school adjustment counselors, and it only focused on grades 6 to 12 with a primary focus on the high school, with most of the administrative responsibilities focusing on school guidance activities, not school counseling activities. We recommend to change in title to Supervisor of Social Emotional Learning, and to add the identified district needs that I had presented to the job description, but also consider if there's any other revisions to the job description that are needed. This proposal will allow for a dedicated administrator to address action steps in the strategies for improvement that relate to SEL and mental health. It also adds a needed area of expertise in SEL and mental health and interconnects with the Director of Special Education, the Supervisor of Health and Wellness, and the Supervisor of Health Services. And that is the end of my presentation and report, and I would like, is there any questions?
Thank you. Couple things. When I was on that group for MTSS, we did have a lot of discussions when, and forgive me, I'm not going to remember all of their names. Howard was one of the guys, and I can't remember. But when they were here, we had a load of discussion around SEL screeners, and so I'm kind of I'm sitting back going, I'm not sure I'm understanding why, and I'm not saying this to point at someone. I'm just, that was part of our discussion that needed to be implemented. So I'm like, have we not been doing something?
So we were talking about this the other day because in the urban superintendent's network, some of the districts were talking about the Swiss data collection, which is something that Howard spoke of years ago.
Okay.
But the schools went into a system of using Aspen to document some of the concerns in a different way, because Aspen was just being rolled out at the same time. So not adding something different. At this point, we are looking for something that has actually been designed just to track and so that we'd have that specific data outside of Aspen. And so that is a need. that, yes, we had that discussion, but we went in another direction at that time.
Okay, because
So
I
yeah.
remember him, and I apologize, but I cannot remember the woman that was with him, and they were presenting this, and there was a lot of discussion, especially around the elementary schools, that we needed to have consistency across the elementary schools about how this was being reported and how the information was traveling up. And I remember that because we had a lot of discussion about how it was supposed to move from elementary into Whitcomb to make sure that that information traveled with those students.
We do have
So-
that. Now. We're currently in Aspen, so if there are concerns, and we also have Otis that we're also using as well. So we have two systems, but we're looking more for a screener so that people can track specific behaviors and actions of students that would then help us identifying students that are at risk, that need specific
Yeah,
interventions.
typically it's a student survey that they would complete, similar to, a little bit like the SBIRT, but where we actually have the students' names to attach to the data so that we can identify students that could be at risk and need to be, to be able to reach out to them, to be able to get them help and resources. So when I had first started in the district, we had the supervisor of counseling position, and it was only grades 6 to 12, and it was really focused on the guidance side of the position versus counseling. So when that position was vacated, it asked to, can we go back to the table and look to see if this is a position that meets the district needs, or do we need to look at redeveloping it? So coming back now, there were some, we had COVID that came into it, and so now we're just coming back with what we would like to move forward with presenting and changing that position so it does meet the district's needs. So
I guess I hear you on the needs. I guess I would also say, though, that our needs haven't necessarily changed around guidance needs either. So,
The position, this was Sharon's
this,
position.
right, but
And it was not what we needed, and our needs have gotten, have exacerbated.
Yeah.
Things have just gotten so much worse. The clinicians have never had supervision. When the person that was in that position and then it transferred to the other person and then vacated, that was never included in that position. So, this has been needed for a long time. I 100% support it. I also think, so with a screening tool, these that you're talking about, is this something that all students would take on a yearly or some kind of basis, or would you only break it out if you had concerns?
I would defer that to the person in the position, because
Right. You
I don't
the
have that
clinical
expertise
to know
in,
that. Yeah.
and whether it's something that you would want to have in at each grade level, or is it just,
But that's actually something that I remember. I remember Howard talking about this, was that it was critical that it wasn't just only select people, that it was to every, that it was across the board, because it needed to be a catch, not targeted, that it needed to collect information across the board because there were too many people that get missed by targeting.
So similar to the screeners that pediatricians
Right.
are now always using at their,
We want a
yearly.
formal system like we have with our academic screeners that
Okay.
we do on a regular basis. We do that multiple times of the year. So we want a user-friendly, a system in which that, at the same time, we have to be aware it has to be user-friendly and it has to be quick, because the teachers cannot do a really time-consuming multiple times a year for every student. So we need experts to help us identify those correct tools that gives us the data that we need so that we can meet the needs of our students.
and I would also like to add, that the committee has received the job description of the supervisor of counseling position that was in existence, and as you read through it, much of that is really high school based, and a lot of those roles and responsibilities are managed by the guidance department at the high school. They have guidance counselors that are doing that work without needing a specific administrator to oversee, course selections and credit recovery and things like that.
This is not guidance, this is counseling.
But I have to say, when we had the discussion around this, a lot of different issues came about that we did have concerns about. I mean, yes, guidance makes sense for 6 to 12, but there was all kinds of discussions around counselors and that we were missing the SACs and all of that. Like,
That's what I'm saying.
right, this is not
filling
brand
a
new.
need.
This was,
We've been talking about this for years.
for years.
And part of it with the supervisor of counseling, I didn't understand why the school psychologist wasn't under that umbrella too. And again, partly with also in collaboration with the director of special education, because the school psychologists are doing a lot of special education testing, evaluations, but they're also like
But they're
counselors, but
clinicians.
yes, so.
But I guess I'm asking though, because it doesn't sound like it needs to be, well, should it be an either or, right? As opposed to both of them have a place and a potential need
I'm
in
sorry.
different ways.
I'm just to clarify, either or, you mean guidance versus counseling?
Yes.
Guidance
So-
is already set.
Well, but I'm
So
I'm talking about something that's under-resourced versus something that has zero resources.
I
Right?
hear you, but I
We
guess
need to equitably at least bring this part of the equation up to where this is. I'm not saying that guidance couldn't use more, but
But part of our discussion is that guidance at the middle school is different than guidance at the
Yes.
high school. So we need somebody with an expert in the field that is able to evaluate everything that is in place and maybe come forward with a recommendation for something different in different pockets. But we need somebody that's an expert in the field and we're going to put them to work like and nonstop. We're rather fearful that we'll be asking too much, but to actually help one person lead that work.
Mm-hmm.
so we will see, so you're working on a job description, we'll see it with the budget book? Is that what you're talking
We
about?
have the position is included in the budget that will be presented. I believe that the next steps would be to approach Unit B with a proposal to discuss changing the existing job description, job title that's within the contract. But
wouldn't that
I'll
actually
defer
need to go to negotiations for a conversation that negotiations group?
We don't get to see the job description before you start negotiating it?
Yeah, they would
I
have to
would,
approve it.
yep.
I think
So-
you'd have to bring that to us first.
Okay,
Yeah.
Then we would move on to the.
Sounds good.
To the Unit B. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yes. I would kindly recommend perhaps making it as part of the budget presentation.
Yeah.
Just selfishly looking at the budget book, looking nice and not having a job description on it. But we can make it a part of the workshap presentation
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
yeah, I
have
didn't mean it
as an
had to be
action item.
physically in the book. I just meant kind of included in that experience.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No need to mess up his flow. Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Ms. O'Brien? Nope, seeing none. Thank you. Minutes of the January 10th meeting. Entertain a motion.
Oh, motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, opposed, carries. Public participation. Public participation. Seeing none. Action items. We've done A. B, FY23 operating budget transfers. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I have a couple of a few transfers for the committee's consideration tonight. At Whitcomb, I am requesting a transfer of $14,034 from the para line to offset overages in the math line due to an onboarder position that was hired at a higher salary than the outgoing position, as well as an overage in the principal line due to long-term coverage at that line. District-wide accounts, I'm requesting a transfer of $11,580 from the copy line to offset overages in the district-wide director supervisor line, in the longevity line, maintenance, attendance coordinator, COVA pay, and legal services account line. And I'm happy to answer any questions on any of these accounts.
Questions, anyone? Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Acceptance of donations and gifts. As MSP Digital Marketing, MPS $900.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Donor's Choice, Goodnow Brothers, Ms. Horowitz, $995.80.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Holiday Dreams Foundation, MPS middle and high school students, $500.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. The next one we are going to table until the next meeting, please. That's number 4. Number 5, Blackboard Giving Fund, Boston Scientific. Kane School, $60.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Reports of subcommittees. Any subcommittees? Nope. Members Forum. Mrs. Matthews has read the warrant and asked me to sign on her behalf, which I will do. Any other members? Nothing? Hennessy, you got nothing for us, huh? Got nothing.
Well, got nothing unless you want to know that I have a board meeting with the MIAA and MIAC tomorrow, so who knows, we'll go with that.
The adventures continue.
Just always continues, you just never know.
Okay. I think we're done. Entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 9:17.